All good.
Uh, all right, looks like we are live. All right. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So we have an individual here today that, as I'm looking at his history and looking at his bio, he definitely has a hell of a story. And, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing with a particular nickname. So for this case, I think his name is going to be highly lucrative to anyone that's listening is going to kind of tell you what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to name him the Gym Boss, right? But he's going to be able to tell you why I'm calling him the Gym Boss. So George, the floor is yours. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about you and what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, for sure, brother. Yeah. So my name is George. I really like the nickname Gym Boss. Thanks for having me on, man. And my background is I was actually born in Japan, raised in China. I didn't move to the U.S. until I was about 10-ish years old. Grew up East Coast. Similar to a lot of people that got into fitness, came from a little bit of a troubled childhood. It was very turbulent, right? Fitting in and growing up was really difficult, and I always felt like an outsider, right? Like it wasn't until one day when I turned 18 that I had a really tough moment with myself looking in the mirror when I just addressed the fact that I just didn't like myself. That was when I decided to do something about it. That was the point at which my whole life turned around completely. I would describe the first 18 years of my life was apathetic, complete apathy, right? It's like my mom would ask me like, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't care. I don't know. I don't care." Once I got into fitness, though, everything turned around for me completely, right? So I went off to college. I went from an underachiever to not really an overachiever, but I think I achieved all right. But turned into a good student, built my own major, health marketing entrepreneurship, the whole nine yard. After I graduated, it became exactly what I'm doing right now, right? So I ended up just wanting to dive into building a business to learn how to provide value and just pretty much landed through sheer luck this opportunity where I started being able to help a lot of gym owners and form my own community of supporting gym owners at scale by helping them market their gyms, getting people in the door, transforming people's lives, similar to how I did when I was 18. So that's kind of like a little quick intro, if you
Cool,
will.
cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, this unpacks some of that, right? I mean, obviously, with your business today, and I've read some of your stats. I mean, obviously, you took some businesses that were making a couple $1,000 to $100,000 a month. You've done that with your businesses, and you've done that with hundreds of other businesses as well too. So let's just talk about like how has that helped to grow those businesses? I mean, what are you doing to help them? Like, are you just doing marketing, or do you have a complete system and strategy behind the scenes that you kind of help them learn to grow with?
Good question. Well, I think as with all things, building a business or anything worthy of pursue, in my opinion, it's kind of like an iceberg, right? It's like outside looking in, you always see the tip of the iceberg, but what happens in reality is there's always like what's below the ocean level, right? Where's the bulk of the iceberg take place. So whether it's growing our business or helping our partners grow theirs, um, it's more than what meets the eyes, right? It's like initially when we first started the business, we like this is like 4 years ago. What I really wanted to learn as a fresh college grad was what is providing value, right? It's like because we talk about it all the time, but what does that mean, right? So for me, the first skill I wanted to learn more about was just marketing, Facebook and Instagram ads specifically, because my brother was working at Facebook at the time, and he was an account manager that was managing, I think it was like $90 million a quarter. So I knew Facebook ads worked, right? So that was the first piece that I learned. But as I started diving into the world of business, a lot of cold calls and a lot of just really tough experiences, right? It's like I learned very quickly that you needed to learn a lot more to be able to help the people you're looking to help. Namely for gyms specifically, once I started working with gym owners, after we nailed down the lead generation piece, the first piece, which is marketing, right? The next piece was like, all right, well, how do we get people in the door? And then the next piece after that, it's like, okay, well, how does the conversation sound for you to actually convert them into a paying member or paying client that really wants to stick into the gym for the long haul, right? And then how do you keep them? So lead generation, lead nurturing, sales process, fulfillment, all those pieces. Essentially, what we realized, so we need to learn as much of it as possible to be able to provide as much value as possible to our clients that we're looking to serve. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and I hear how confident you are, and it kind of reminds me of, I think you had a video on Instagram, and it was like maybe about 2 years, 3 years ago, and you were saying you were looking at your younger self, and you were saying that you were always designed to put your best foot forward, and not saying that was something that was negative, but trying to get approval from other people. So right now, listening to you and hearing the way you're delivering this, I would think that person is not who you are today through and through. So I want you to talk about that transition. Like, how did you go from being the person that was looking for validation from other people to becoming the boss you are right now?
Mm, I appreciate that question, man, because I think a lot of people go through it, right? Because the sense of wanting approval is a biological want that all human beings have, right? It's like for us, it's almost survival, right? Because when we were hunters and gatherers, let's say way back in the day, like if we trace it up to our ancestors, if you weren't liked by your tribe, then you were kicked out. And what did that mean? That meant you were going to die, right? So it's either you're liked by people that you're surrounded by, or you're going to die, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think that played a really big role growing up, just because I moved from halfway across the world where I didn't speak a word of English over to this entire other world, right? It's like where all of a sudden I'm 10 years old and everything that I knew of around me, it was like completely ripped away from me. And what it felt like was like constantly I was on the fringe of things, right? It's like I just I wasn't able to make friends easily. I wasn't able to connect with people easily. Just because I was so different, right? So that's where a good chunk of my wanting approval from other people and also from myself came from. When I turned 18, actually, when I got into health and fitness, the initial wanting of approval, it actually came largely from within, right? It's like I demanded a higher version of myself.
Mhm.
For me, that served me at some point, until at some point along the way, like it didn't, right? Because that wanting of approval, it comes from other people, but it also comes from within.
Mhm.
Along the way, I think it was last March where I really started diving deep into just the inner work, if you will, right? Just understanding myself at a very fundamental level, in terms of how my emotions work, how often they come up, right? It's like what gets triggered by what, and also how do I make decisions while I'm emotionally reactive, right?
Mhm.
As I dove really deep into the inner work, that was a main component that I really had to work through, because I realized coming out of the other side, letting go of that wanting approval, just letting go of what other people think of me, um, that will actually help me make better decisions in business and otherwise. Right. So it's just once you become aware of that, it just comes down to a series of decisions. Right. It's like, will you let the decisions that you make based on where you want to go and who you want to become, get in the way of you, this feeling of wanting to approve from yourself and other people?
Mhm.
Or will you just do your own thing? Just choose to be the best kind of person you can be, in honor of helping yourself, helping everyone around you, you know?
So let's just keep playing off of that. I mean, your last words were you're being the best person that you can be, and that's
Mhm.
where you are right now. And obviously, you're from what I can tell, you're a person that's always going to the next level and always trying to achieve something more and greater than where you are right now currently. So
Yeah.
if you could define yourself today, in
Yeah.
this moment right now, in just 3 to 5 words, what would those 3 to 5 words be?
I could define myself today with 3 to 5 words: growth oriented. I don't know if that counts as one or two.
Kind of as
um,
one.
yeah. Compassion, focused, impactful. I think those are the four keywords.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, I could definitely see. I mean, like as I'm asking you these questions, I mean, you're definitely thinking about these answers through and through. So, like, this next question is going to be one of those answers that it may take you a second to think about, but I think it's good for the listener to kind of understand. Right?
Mhm.
You're in a space to where there are a lot of A-type personalities. Right? You have like the gym owners that used to be like the really buff gym rats that's kind of beating their chest, and then you kind of have some of the other personalities that it's all about the money, don't care about the people. So in your worst case example of a client that you've dealt with, without disclosing that client's name,
Yeah.
what was the thing that they just didn't get? They just didn't compute. What made that client so bad, and how did you overcome that?
Mm. The experience of working with a worst client, I guess in terms of experience by me and our team, or um, Yeah, is that
Either one,
okay?
whichever. Because usually when I ask a question like that,
Yeah.
something resonated. Either the picture of that person popped up in your head,
Mhm.
or the residual of the less zeros on that particular account popped. Somebody had pissed you off sometime or the other. So I'm really asking you about like who the fuck pissed you off, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, no, that's fair, man. I think I mean the person that bothered me the most was actually a client that we delivered a shit ton of results for. Within the first month, I think he signed up 44 people. I think he made like, I don't know, like 20 plus grand, right? It's like month one. And he had been making that every single month um for as long as we were partnered up, right? It's like, and where it went kind of sour was he ended up from our perspective just kind of like really ditched the bill on us and just like went completely dark on us, right? It's like even though I thought we had a really good and strong, solid standing relationship, right? But long story short, what ended up happening was what made the experience really tough was he was the kind of person that was always fearful of other people just like taking advantage of him, right?
Mm,
It's like he was fearful of other people getting to him, whether it was an old pattern or prior experiences or what it may be of working with his business partners that he felt like didn't fully contribute, or his previous past, which he shared with me. Um, that included a little bit of trouble here and there. Um, I think what came out of it was that his standard was really high, which is really good, right? It's like which I really appreciated. But over time, during any bounce, when he wasn't able to get exactly what he wanted at the right time, like he just started raising a really big fuss about it, right? So it became a repeated pattern, and across time, it got to a point where there were certain times that he like not really accused, but even like when there were like logistical errors or mishaps or miscommunication, he perceived that as us just trying to be out there to get him, like us trying to take advantage of him, us trying to maybe grab from his pocket or what it may be, right? It's like it ultimately led to a point where he he didn't take full self responsibility in terms of how his gyms were doing, right? For him personally, he had one gym that was doing really well. The other gym, he blamed us for the fact that the second location was actually not doing as well because of how much we were charging. Like he raised a big fuss around us charging what we're worth,
mm,
and he said pretty much point blank that, hey, like the second location, this is you guys, the way you guys charge is the reason why I haven't been able to jump on board with my second location, and that's why my second location has been struggling, even though his first one is doing well. Right. So the lack of ownership and taking self responsibility in terms of your business and life, plus the pattern of this fear of other people taking advantage of you, plus this pattern of wanting to blame other people or situations for what's going on internally, that makes it for a really difficult experience. Where coming out of that, it's like I actually made multiple attempts of reaching out, but yeah, what ended up being was he just ended up ditching a bill on us. So we helped him, and at the end, his card bounced, and then he ditched like a $900 ad spend bill on us, and I'm like, cool, all right, I guess we'll eat it. So yeah.
got it, got it. So I mean, let's talk about like the numbers for a minute. I mean, I think I saw a note somewhere on one of your sites or one of your descriptions about the potential demographic of a gym that you like to work with is a gym that has reoccurring revenue model that starts at $100 a month. Is that correct?
Yeah, minimum. I'd say like if so we mainly help like brick and mortar mom and pop shop gyms,
Mhm.
right? Versus big box gyms. So if they're charging at least $100 a month, we can help them. Usually that means they deliver some kind of group fitness, right? Like whether it's personal training, semi-private, large group training slash boot camp. Those are the gyms we can help, right?
Okay. So I mean, how did you come up with that? I mean, obviously, like there's Planet Fitness out there that has like the $10 model, and they're a gross amount, right? And then
Mhm.
you have like the more specialized mom and pops that you're talking about that start at 100, probably go up to like 250 along those lines. Why are you in that spot versus more of the global that like LA Fitness and the larger gyms?
We kind of just landed there. We initially just landed there just because when I was first starting out, I didn't have a whole lot of experience, right? It's like I just want to build a business and be able to provide enough value for me to build something that I found meaningful, right? It's like that's what I was really going for. So starting off, like I didn't have a whole lot of sales experience. So the first thing I did was I reached out to my internal network. The very first client that we had ever taken on was actually a buddy of mine who owns a personal training studio. I shelled out of pocket. I was like, hey man, like I'm learning this thing. Let me pay for your ads. We can put it to test. I think it'll work. And it did. I dropped like $500 in my own cash. I made him like 3 grand. It was a personal training studio. But the next set of clients that I got was from cold calling, right? Very first client that was not my friend, that I didn't shell out money for, was a CrossFit gym based in Staten Island. And we're actually still friends to this day, right? So that was 4 years ago. So we kind of just like landed there because we realized there's a lot of pain with those kind of gyms. But then later on, we decided to cement around that just because like that fits in line with our values, right? It's like we have talked to big box gyms before, but the whole business model around a big box gym is how do we get as many people on membership and then hope not everyone shows up, right? It's like because if they had like 1,500 or 2,000 or 3,000 people showing up, they wouldn't have enough space, right? So where the whole premise behind a mom and pop shop gym that provides group fitness, let's say a CrossFit box or a boot camp or whatever it may be, it's like it's contingent on how frequently can we get the members to show up, like let's say 3 days a week, for them to stick to their healthy habits, right? For them to grow as a business, right? So that we align with more. So that's why.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So, I mean, obviously, part of your notes was saying that, okay, there's 20,000 gyms, right? And about 80% of those gyms, they're not even breaking even. So, out of that 80% of those gyms, I would think that majority of them are people that you can kind of target and communicate and help to grow if they're at that $100 per month or more level. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, with that niche, I mean, obviously, it's like a wide open niche, right? I mean, there's like I don't know how many people, because I mean, I want people to really understand like your business. I mean, there's people out there that will come in and say, hey, we could help with your gym as far as the look and feel. There's people that'll come in and say, hey, we can help with your trainers and help train your trainers to sell or whatever else. But you have a completely different model structure to where you're actually doing like more digital marketing on the front end to then do the lead to fill in those seats, and then once they get there you want to actually make sure you're delivering value to convert them to make sure that they stay for the long haul, which is a completely different method than most people are doing with gyms right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say it depends on which kind of businesses you're looking at, right? It's like if you, because actually, believe it or not, when it comes to the lead generation model for gyms, lead generation agencies across the board for local businesses, it has actually skyrocketed in terms of saturation, especially over the past like 6 years or so, right? I don't know if you know this guy like Ty Lopez, right? It's like he's like on social media. I think 5 6 years ago maybe, he kind of just blew up this concept of SMMA, building a social media marketing agency, right? And along with that, actually a lot of people pour themselves into building a SMMA, right? Including me, because it's a low barrier to entry. Anyone can watch a set of YouTube videos or jump on a course, and after that starts pitching their service to local business owners. So I actually think you might you'd be surprised, right, at how many people that jump into the gym space and or just lead generation space in general when it comes to building an agency. But I think what we differ is just how we have gone about doing it, right? It's like putting our customers first, because from day one, like we just been performance based. Because like I remember hearing time and time again from gym owners that I was chatting with, because like all I want to do was just like help them, because I knew they were going through a hard time. And repeated encounter was just I spent thousands of dollars on marketing, none of it worked, and you could hear the frustration and the anger in their voice, right? So for me, I vowed, I was like, I'm not going to be like one of those people. I'm just not. Like if I'm taking people's money and people don't feel like they're getting value from it, like I feel like it's blood money, I'm not going to touch it. Like that's just how we operated. So from day one, we were revenue share model. Like it was like, don't pay me anything, dude. Let me get your results first, then you can pay me. That's how we got our start 4 years ago, and we still hold on to that value today.
I mean, it definitely makes sense. So let's talk about like the scope of work, right? I mean, obviously you've been in this long enough to where you're a professional, you know it very well. But how long did it take you to get to where you are right now currently?
Oh, I mean, 4 years. Yeah, 4 plus years. I mean, I've invested like hundreds, like in terms of, I mean, if we were to include like amount of ad spend we poured into marketing for gyms specifically to test out, like hundreds of thousands of dollars by itself. But like in terms of just like investment in myself, right? Whether it's mentorship or courses or coaches. I mean, it's been like probably well over 150 to 200K over the course of 4 years after I graduated. Um, yeah, and I could dive into those as well. Like if there are definitely crazy stories because along with such is the very first client that I had taken in Staten Island. Like I actually worked out of his gym, to get the experience because I wanted to learn more. Like I didn't want to deliver just leads because I don't care about leads. I care about like, am I helping this person or not?
Mm.
And in order to learn that, like I realized I need to pick up the phone and actually call people. So like I was actually running, I was running lead gen. I was cold calling for him during the day, and I would sell at his CrossFit box like from like 4 p.m. Until like 8 p.m. and sometimes like 9 p.m. And I would, yeah, it's a crazy commute and everything from New York. But yeah, a lot. But it's been a wild ride. It's been fun.
So I'm hearing you. I mean, obviously you dropped New York. I'm originally from Brooklyn, so I mean, I
Oh
know
yeah.
New York really well, right? And you're talking about Staten Island. So again, if you talk to any New Yorker, these are two types of New Yorkers, right? Is one New Yorker that New York is in their blood is in their veins, and that's who they are, and that's it. They're never going to leave New York. And you got the other New Yorkers that can't wait to leave New York as fast as humanly possible, right? Those are
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So you're obviously on the spectrum to where you're converting, you're making capital, you're living in the city. But let's say if you could time travel, if you can go back in time and change anything, maybe even a location, when would you go back and what would you change and do differently than what you've done so far?
As far as like being in New York specifically, or when it comes to the business, or
Collectively, because I mean, all of them, they're all dominoes, right? I mean, one
yeah,
thing feeds into another. So if you can kind of just think, some people they may say, okay, you know what? When I was in elementary school, some person may say maybe I should have stayed in Japan, stayed in China. Somebody may say, well, maybe I should be in California. Somebody may say maybe I shouldn't have done gyms. Maybe I should have went into digital marketing. So
I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing just because the way I see it is that the lessons are learned
mm,
after the experiences that you have had, right? So I think what has made me who I am, because largely who we are is human beings. We're very habitual. We're extremely habitual, right? Who we are today is 99% similar to who we were yesterday, right? It's shown through the repeated number of thoughts that we have, right? So if we consider ourselves to be largely like patterns in terms of how we engage things, right? So whether it's and the habits, and where those habits and patterns come from two things, which is nature and nurture.
mm.
The nurture side that has shaped me very thoroughly to make me who I am. I wouldn't change anything because that's made me exactly who I am. Um,
Very cool. So let's just take it even further back, right? I mean, the fact that like you're coming from multiple different countries in your upbringing, right? Were any of your parents particularly entrepreneurs, considering that you lived in so many different regions over your course of your life?
could you rephrase that?
Were any of your parents entrepreneurs? Like, where are you getting the entrepreneurial insight from? Because I mean, obviously now you have it, but I think it's
Yeah,
something that you learned, or you maybe you've seen it at an early age and then you picked it up later on.
yeah. I would say my mom was. My mom is entrepreneurial. So my parents actually split up at an early age, right? So my mom and my dad, they're both Chinese, and they actually moved over to Japan to grab their PhDs because China was actually at the time rolling out like this international program where they were able to send kids off to, let's say, Japan or Germany to study from there. So my dad actually, um, IQ wise, was he actually tested as like one of the top people in school at the time, and China was already highly competitive as it is. So he was actually sent out to Japan.
Hmm.
So he got a PhD in physics, and my mom followed with him to Japan and got a PhD in geriatrics. Um, so as far as like entrepreneurial experience or endeavors, they never really went through it from a business standpoint earlier on, right? It's like my dad was, because the culture in Japan was very interesting.
Hmm.
It's the culture where you grab one job, you stay at a job for 30 years. If you actually leave that job, you're kind of screwed. So that's the culture in Japan. So my dad got into investing, I think pretty early on, which had its own highs and lows. Right? But my mom, however, her entrepreneurial spirit, I think she carried that over in terms of how she raised us. It was me and my two siblings. because we have a crazy backstory in terms of how we even arrived to the US in the first place, because she actually got over to the US as a postdoctoral researcher at Harvard. So she had to grab a very highly specialized visa that's applicable for people that has a very unique skill set. And her manager at the time in the US and at Harvard was able to vouch for her. So that's how she landed herself in East Coast in Massachusetts. And then when we followed a suit 3 years later, when we first applied for visa, we actually got denied. So all of us actually got denied. So we weren't able to come into the US. The reason being, I think and this is just our interpretation of it, it's very standard for maybe like a single mom to be in the US, but if her whole family applies to visit, there's a reasonably high likelihood that they could stay, right? It's like for one reason or another. So actually, the first time we applied for it, they turned us down. They turned all of us down. So my mom needed to figure out, all right, well, how do I get them to come over here? Because one of the reasons she decided to stay in the US was to be able to bring all three of us together. It was me, my sister, who's a year younger, and my brother, who's 4 years older. Because after the divorce, we were all, as a family, we actually split up. My brother and I, we were with my dad's side. My sister was with my mom's side. So she wanted to bring all three of us together and also plant us in the land of opportunity, if you will, in the US, right? So for her next set of action was like, okay, well, how do we get them in? And what she thought of is if there was on record, let's say one instance of us having visited the US and we left, right? It's like, then it would probably build more trust, right? So she actually planned a vacation for us to visit Hawaii. And this time, instead of applying from China to the US, come from Japan as friends, not to visit her, but planning for a vacation to Hawaii for a week and then leaving. That would work. And it did, right? So like we actually visited Hawaii. That was the first time we came to the US in 2004, I think in June. Naturally, we came, we left, right? So at that point, the next time we applied for a visa, we got approved because they're like, oh, this person, they've already been in the US before. It's like, cool, they're approving us. Then after that, we were able to visit my mom. And as soon as we got there, she was able to plan accordingly to the extent that by the time we visited, she would be able to start our green card process. So that was actually how we were able to start the process for getting a permanent residency in the US so that we didn't have to leave after like 6 months. So we were able to stay for schooling. So like her entrepreneurial spirit in terms of how she thought outside of the box, problem solving, right? Overcoming obstacles, perseverance. That's, I think, a good chunk of where I got it from. Speaking out loud is kind of cool, right? Because like I haven't thought about that in a little bit. And my brother Henry, I see as a older mentor for sure, right? He's 4 years older, and he has been very entrepreneurial actually. Ever since we were in late high school. So that's where his interest had taken place. And he was a big inspiration in terms of how I even selected my major at UMass Amherst of designing my own major, right? So I built it, right? It's like, for those that haven't heard of what that means, it was an interesting curriculum offered by our school, UMass Amherst, public school, where you're able to just piece together what is it that you're looking to study. So it's called individual concentration, right? So for me at the time, I was like really into fitness, but then what, right? So I started taking exercise science, nutrition, kinesiology, right? It's like the exercise science, communication, psychology, and then I also started digging into like business, like marketing, management, because I was curious. So I just started digging into all these courses. I gotta say, most of it wasn't that helpful. But yeah, that's where earlier on I drew my entrepreneurial inspiration, if you will, and then that kind of formalized into something that's practical in college, bit by bit.
So let me unpack and repack that. I mean, pretty much what you just told us is that you're a byproduct of two scientists, right? First and foremost, right? You're a byproduct of two scientists, and it makes perfect sense because I think I was looking at it. I think one of your favorite books, it was like maybe 2-3 years ago, was The Alchemist. And I was like, why is The Alchemist on the top of his shelf? And then he tells me his dad has a PhD in physics. There's the damn answer right there. So it all came like that entire you talking out the box was kind of like, okay, now it all came to full. I was going to ask you about The Alchemist, but I don't have to ask you no more. You just pretty much told me where that came from. So I mean, since we're on the topic of books, let's just talk more about like the education of books? Because I mean, obviously you're well spoken, you're well versed in books, and I mean that's just one of the books. I think another book that you were talking about at the time was Mamba Mentality,
Mm,
which is the Kobe Bryant book.
Kobe Bryant. Yeah.
I want you to talk about like the past 10 years. What book do you recommend to an entrepreneur that has the gusto but just needs a little bit more information to make the next step?
Oh, I like that. I think for well, any entrepreneurs that have already started off or someone who's looking to dive into entrepreneurship,
Both. Just do two books then.
but both. Okay. Um, anyone that hasn't started off yet, but wants to explore the idea of it, because I never considered myself to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that meant. I was like, I even took a class in college. It's like entrepreneurship, right? It's like it sounds very daunting. It's like what the hell does that mean? Um, but for me, like what really piqued my interest was early on. I read a book called 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, right? So that's a staple for a lot of entrepreneurs, I believe. What it offers is not it's not necessarily a solution to a 4 hour work week, although it could, right? But what it offers is, I think, a set of it breaks your beliefs, right? So a set of experiences after you dive into the book, in which it'll challenge your beliefs in terms of what's possible, in terms of maybe how you have been living and or what you're looking forward to in life, right? And just challenge you to ask deeper questions and design your life in a way that's ideal for you, in a way that's most meaningful to you, right? Because I think too often we just go through life and then we don't question where we're at, why we're doing certain things, and what we're doing, and where we're on the path towards, right? I think the book for our work week, it created the sense of possibility of like, wow, like I see what Tim is saying, but can it be real? And I've actually like I've lived through not all of what Tim has lived through. Naturally, it would be weird. I'm not trying to model it or anything like that, but like I've lived through a fair share of experiences that I never thought would have been possible like 4 years ago. But it's like I spent like just last year, like I spent 3 months in Playa del Carmen, just like living in the coast of Mexico, building an online business that was growing very rapidly, right? It's like with a couple of my best friends that I love spending time with, right? It's like we would hit the beach Monday, Wednesday, Friday at like 7:30 a.m., just walking onto the beach of Mexico with like feet in white sand and beautiful blue waters in like January of like 2021, right? It's like where it should be winter, right? So experiences like that, it's shared also in the 4 hour work week, and I've lived it. So for any person that's looking to dive into entrepreneurship, or has this faint curiosity of what that could be, what it really means is how do you design a life that you care about? How do you design a life that's meaningful to you, right? So I would start there. The 4 hour work week, that's the first book. For anyone that has taken jumping that has jumped into entrepreneurship, then at that point it becomes a little bit different, right? So because to me, that you have jumped into entrepreneurship means you have jumped into a vehicle that's ideally taking you to where you want to go, and you want to make sure that that's a vehicle that's a good fit for you, right? Now that vehicle could be owning a brick and mortar gym. That vehicle could be a digital marketing agency. That vehicle could be building out online courses. That vehicle could be affiliate marketing. That vehicle could be maybe learning high ticket sales or whatever it may be, right? So whatever vehicle that you're jumping into on this path of entrepreneurship, I think there are two books that are off the top of my head that's in my opinion, a must read for any kind of business owners that operate any kind of businesses. The first one, it's by Russell Brunson. It's called .com Secrets. Right. So what it does is actually builds a foundation and a blueprint in terms of what a business actually is. Because I think it's, without diving into the world of business, you understand that business is just it's components of these sub units, if you will, right? So one of the things the book actually walks through is, for example, in order to build a business, you just need to ask yourself pretty much 4 questions. That's one of the main fundamental things I've gathered. Who is it that you want to serve? Who do you want to help? What is the result you're looking to provide them with? You answer those 2 questions. Who do you want to help? What kind of result do you want to deliver to them? Right? So what is the experience? And when you search for those, the answer to those questions long enough, you'll find a product or service. We get really clear on those 2 things, right? And then naturally you can dive deeper into like, okay, well, how am I the person that's able to do this? So on and so forth. How do I go about doing that? So on and so forth. And you figure it out, right? But you come out the other end of those 2 questions after your search, like you have a product or service. For the next two questions is where do I find the people I want to serve, and how do I hook them in?
Hmm.
You find the answer to those two questions, you crack marketing and sales, right? So you identify where you people are living, whether it's digitally, like let's say like in a blog or in a Facebook group, or maybe on Instagram, where you can find them through a specific hashtag or whatever it may be. And then how do you hook them in? How do you start a conversation? How do you actually get them to want to do business with you? You come through to the end of those two questions. You have marketing and sales, right? So that's a must read in my eyes, right? So .com secrets, it's Russell's brilliant what he does. It's incredible. And then the next piece, then once you have built the fundamentals, the next piece that's strategic, that's high level, that you can put into action, is $100 million offer by Alex Hormozi. It's I think it's been the #1 best-selling book when it comes to marketing and advertising for the past, like, I don't know, a year since he's rolled it out, and it's for a reason. It's like 99 cents. That man is what I would say like a genius when it comes to business. He really is, right? It's like, and I've really respected and admired also from afar. I've learned a shit tons from him, right? It's like we actually have very similar business model. It was like a month and a half of me jumping into my own vehicle, into my own business, that I learned of him, because he was the biggest player in the space at the moment. But just learning from afar, $100 million offer, the way he breaks down very complex topics, such as like how do you define value, right, into such simple equations or infographics. I mean, the man's world class. So if you are on the path of entrepreneurship, you have a vehicle that you want to learn, how do I build a better foundation for my business? How do I want to build a very deep foundation so I can build something that is meaningful to me? Those two books are, in my opinion, a must read. Yeah.
So I'm hearing these puzzle pieces, right? And obviously, you've named three separate books, and all three books are great books. And if you have that opportunity to read any of these books, definitely take up, Greg on this offer and read these books, right? So, George, look at it from this standpoint, right? If you had an opportunity to write a book, right? Because I don't think you have published a book as of yet. Do you see yourself kind of combining these three different books and putting a gym twist on it? And if you haven't thought about it, then why? What the hell are you waiting for?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the thought. Um, I have thought about writing a book. At some point, I'm sure I will. However, for me, the way I see it is that I think in life, and this is taking a page out of Naval Ravikant, right? Who's someone who also I studied from. He's the founder of AngelList, brilliant mind, one of the smartest people I have ever learned from. Just like I've never had the fortune of meeting him yet. But one of the things he talks about is like keep iterating and keep changing yourself until you're a category of just you. Right? It's like essentially we keep iterating until we are just uniquely ourselves. And then at that point, it's like there's no competition because there's no you, there's no other you. So for me, that's how I see it. Right? It's like when it comes to writing a book, like I would want whatever my message that I would want to spread in honor of me believing that it will provide as much value to other people as possible. I just want to find what that thing is for me first, right? So I wouldn't want to take a blend of everyone that I've learned from, because I feel as though it just wouldn't ring as true to who I am. I'd rather just like if someone wants to learn how to create the best offer, it's like, well, read this book, right? So if someone wants to learn the fundamentals of business from someone who's done it, bootstrapped companies from the ground up, like here's that, right? And as far as like the gym space, writing a book for it, Alex actually wrote a book for the gym space as well, right? It's really good. I have thought about doing that, but for me, at the same time, it just comes down to like, I'm not trying to like mimic him, or I'm not trying to write another book that just for marketing purposes. For me, I would want to write a book that has messages that I want to share, right? So for me, like what I would be actually leaning towards would be, I think the unique experience I've had the past couple of years of diving really deep into my emotions and how emotions play such a huge role when it comes to decision making in entrepreneurship. I think that's underspoken about, right? So because I think oftentimes like especially men who dive into entrepreneurship, we're taught at an early age, like screw your emotions, don't worry about it, like be logical, make data driven decisions, right? But in reality, what I have found is that like whether we like it or not, emotions are part of what we have, right? It's like it's what it means to be a human being, right? So I think the answer is less so like actually repressing it and really sweeping it under the rug or not dealing with our emotions versus actually learning more about it and coming in tune with it for us to be able to leverage it to our advantage and or make peace with our emotions. I think that's a topic that I actually feel even more pulled towards outside of helping gyms, right? And that's a topic I actually chat about often within my circles and within like agency coaches, agencies that I coach, right? But yeah, to answer your question, like I think as far as book writing, I think until I get to a point when I'm like, man, like I need to get this message off my chest, just bring it to the world. I don't want to do it
Hmm.
because I think when we're able to show from that place, that's when we have something that's truly genuine, authentic that we want to share, right?
So let me play devil's advocate with that, right? Right? Because I
Mhm.
mean, I hear where you're coming from, but look at it from the standpoint of what your business does, right? I mean,
Yeah.
earlier on we talked about having 20,000 gyms. Out of those
Mhm.
20,000 gyms, 80,000 of them are struggling. Out of that 80, out of that 80%, let's say maybe you're converting 1 to 2% nationally on that. Out of
Mhm.
that 1 to 2%, you're pretty much raising $100,000 plus per month, right? So that puts you at a rough valuation per year at $1.2 million. So I mean, think about it. That's a small percentage of the bigger 20,000 people, but though there's people out there that need your message. So don't
Mhm.
you think that you're not helping them by not delivering that book to them? Because again, you're not trying to deliver it to everyone. You're not trying to get to all 20,000. You're trying to talk to your 1% of that 80% that's raising their hands and listening to you that needs more of you. It is not just a marketing tool, but it's you delivering that message to them now.
No, it's true. That's a great point. Yeah, I think what we're diving deeper into is just book being leveraged as a tool for indoctrination, right? So as spreading of a message of a belief. I think that's helpful for sure. I've definitely thought about that. And I agree. I think one of the reasons why I think we as a company also decided it's like it'll be cool for us to jump on the podcast, just to share like what we're doing because I think what we're doing is really cool. That's a start, right? Because we've been so head down just building our own thing, right?
Yeah.
Then the next set of questions it just comes down to okay, well, what is the most effective way to indoctrinate our audience or just like help them get to know us better and also help them get to know maybe their business better and how they can build their own business, right? It's like when it comes to their gym. Um, could that be a book? Possibly. Could that be, let's say, like a Facebook group? Possibly. Could that be, let's say, like an email sequence of people that we're already reaching out to directly? Possibly, right? So it just comes down to how that takes place. Because when you think about it, like a book, um, how I think of it is a buddy of mine actually taught me this framework. It's called the ICE framework, right? ICE, impact, cost, and ease. So something like a book, let's say if it was accomplished, perfectly executed, what is the impact I would have on a business? The things like I don't know, right? Because most people don't like to read, and also most people don't have the time to jump into a book and just read through the whole thing. It's like very few people do. However, the people that do will probably be the people that will want to buy, right? Um, but I'll probably give the impact maybe on the lower side because of that, right? Just because of people's shorter attention span and also how like what it would take to get a book in people's hands. Then when it comes to the cost, like how much of a cost would that be? Like in terms of the time and money, right? It's like time slash attention and money. It's like it would be a pretty big cost, right? It's like because if I were to ever push out anything, especially in the format of a book, I would want to make sure it's very well done. So it would take probably an immense amount of attention from me just to make sure that it's well put together, that there's a lot of revisions going on, that the message is intact, and that the audience is able to derive the most amount of value from it. So the cost would be like really high. So thereby like the rating of it would be low, right? So and then the ease. I've never written a book before, so we could probably self-publish it, or we could just maybe find someone to help us out with that. But it's like just the whole process of going around doing that, and also sitting down writing a book, especially if I'm not pulled towards it,
Mm.
doesn't sound like very easy to execute on, right? So that makes, in my mind, it has a low impact, very low cost because it would be extremely cost intensive, and then not necessarily the easiest to pull off. So that in my mind, my gut check is like, cool. It's not a project that's worth taking on at the moment, right?
Gotcha. Got
Whereas like if we were to take a step back, look at the business as a whole. What is our bottleneck? What's really holding us back from getting us to where we want to go? And then what is a product, if any, that would rank really high on impact, very low cost, very easy to set up. That's essentially what my job is as a CEO, just to identify and execute on. Right.
Yeah, I think you well define the problems and the solutions and why that's not where you are right now. So then that kind of leads me down to the next road. And again, you're a young guy. Your business is to say roughly 4 years old. Where do you see what you're doing 20 years from now?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Man, 20 years from now, it's I'd be lying to say like I can even see that far or think that far, let alone like 10, like I can't even see like 10 years or even 5 years, maybe. But 20 years is it's really far out, right?
Well, look at it
And
from the standpoint of, are you thinking about potentially selling the company down the road, or are you potentially taking what you've learned from the media marketing side and expanding it into other audiences? Like, what general visions do you have for the business down the road?
I like that. Because for me, health and fitness, health and wellness is such a centerpiece in my life. It always has been ever since my life, what I deemed my life to started, like when it started, like at the age of 18. So I think health and fitness will always be a huge piece of my life. It's just in what form is that taking place? So that being said, um, taking a step back, I would want to build gym pillars in a way where it's built to be able to sell, right? It's like that's a standard practice that's highly effective. Just because if you're able to build a business that is sellable, it needs to be operating a certain way, right? So you need to be extremely efficient. You have to know your numbers very clearly. Things have to be able to run without you, without the owner and operator involved. I want to be able to build something that lasts. For me, that's what matters. Do I want to sell it? No, I really don't. I want to build something that lasts 10 years from now. It'll still stay standing
Mm.
without me operating it and people in it that's really growing this to see its potential through, right? It's like for me, when it comes to gym pillars specifically, it's just a matter of a question of what could this be,
Hmm.
right? It's like just following the breadcrumbs. Like, what could this be? Like just seeing the potential through. Because where we come from, it's like I'm as a person, like I'm really not money motivated. In fact, I think it has hurt the business to a certain extent, whereas I'm more so people centered. Um, so for me, it's like how big can we get this to be, and how many people's lives can we touch, and how much better can we get, right?
Hmm.
So that's my main focus. I'd say, I mean, our company is still so young, right? Like, even though I got started 4 years ago, it wasn't until 2 years ago where I quit my full-time job at LinkedIn, where I went full bore on this, I just full time. And we have grown really fast since after surviving 2020, right, when COVID hit, and it was tough. 2021, we grew from a team of 2 to a team of 11, and this year we have grown. I mean, we've doubled last year, and I want to see where we can finish off, right? It's like, but long story short, within the next 5 years, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if we were just like double, 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 double. But who knows? Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think this is what I'm pouring all my being into currently, because I have identified this to be the most meaningful thing currently.
So what I've heard, I mean, obviously we've been talking, for a while right now, and I'm really good at like listening to like the little details. Earlier on, you talked about a relative being on worked for Facebook, and then you just alluded to you working for LinkedIn. Now, for the listener, these are two major social media platforms that have like ads all day, all night. Like, I mean, they're potentially raising money on their ads. So, do you think having access to those two in your back pocket kind of helped you to understand the platforms a little bit more than the average Joe?
More than the average Joe, definitely. Yeah, definitely more than the average Joe. I think my brother Henry, when he worked at Facebook, I mean, I think he was able to get a much deeper understanding in terms of how advertising works in a modern age, right? Whereas like oftentimes what is talked about like in college is it's still like very outdated methods of like direct mail and so on and so forth, or like coupons, right? It's like people's attention span are much shorter than that, and they don't care about that anymore as much, nearly as much. Um, so in terms of understanding more of digital marketing, yeah, I would say so. But when it comes to my experience working at LinkedIn, I was in a sales role. If anything, the biggest thing that I gleaned from she's working at like a multi-billion-dollar company, was how it was run, right? It's again, and what a business at that size, like what that does, what that looks like, even though I was able to only see like a tip of iceberg, right? As an entry-level sales rep. But there were a lot of things I really liked about the company culture in terms of how they were running things, the positive experiences, how sales teams were run, how one-on-ones are had, different values that they were able to have and instill in their team members, the way they ran the business, right? It's like in the business model itself. I think there are a lot of value that I was able to derive from my experience working on LinkedIn. Yeah, compared to the average Joe, 100%.
Nice, nice. So let's just talk about like tools that you use on a day-to-day basis. I mean, obviously you're talking about, Meta Business Portal, you're talking about the Audience Insight tool, but I mean, on a real day-to-day basis, is there any particular software that you think that you would not be able to do what you're doing without having access to?
Oh, 100%. I mean, as far as tools, like the first main thing is Slack.
Mm,
So that's how our entire team communicates, right? It's like before Slack, I don't know what people did, right? It's like I can't. It's kind of like I can't imagine like what people's work looked like with pre-computers or pre like like anything like that. Slack is the number one tool that we check every single day. We communicate every single day. Just like pretty much direct messages, we're able to form different channels, right? Gmails. We use a tool called Go High Level. So that's a software. It's fascinating. It's really, really well built. I think it was started probably 6, 7 years ago. For agency owners, that anyone that offers paid media as a service, right? It's like Facebook, Instagram ads. I'd say it's a must. It's especially for especially for lead generation, right? Um, but yeah, that tool allows you to two-way text leads that come in, two-way call, two-way email, track your pipeline, opportunities, all of it. We use it as CRM. We use it for our clients. All of our clients get built one. Yeah, a lot of software, a lot of tools.
nice, nice. So let's just talk about your clients for a minute. So let's say you have a new gym owner, right? Let's say he has 2 to 3 locations, or she has 2 to 3 locations, and obviously they say they're charging $150 a month, but they hit that crux, and they've been at that crux for like 6 to 9 months, and they've been rattling their brains, and they
Mhm.
come to you. What words of wisdom would you deliver to them to help them to realize that they can move on to the next level?
Um, Good question. I think most of it is going to be context dependent, but given the context you offered me, if they charge $150 a month, they've been stuck at 6 to 9 months, they open up 2 to 3 locations. Chances are, my best guess is one of the locations probably doing well, two other ones are probably not doing as well. That's usually how it goes, right? It's like one of the biggest mistakes we have seen is gym owners opening up a second location faster than they should, because what it does is splits bandwidth, it splits your attention, splits your because the hardest thing is finding the right people, right? So it splits your manpower as well. So it becomes extremely hard. If a gym has been stuck from 6 to 9 months, I mean, what that tells me is like, I don't know how many people you guys are bringing in, and or if you're tracking how many people you're losing, which is churn, right?
Mhm.
The industry average for churn is about 10%. So if you're bringing in, let's say like consistently, let's say you have 100 people, 100 members, and you have a churn of 10, and you're only gaining 10, right? So that's why you're stuck at 6 to 9 months, because your churn has caught up to how many people you bring in. This is called inflow without making it complex. It's just how many people do you have coming in. If a gym is ever stuck for whatever reason, it's because the number of people that are leaving, it's directly matching up to the number of people that are coming in. So first you have to be able to identify, okay, well, what issues do I have, right? It's like, is this a churn issue? Am I losing too many people? Because if out of 100 people, you're losing 20 people, there's something about maybe your staff or your product or your experience or process that's getting people to fall into the cracks and not stick around for a long time. Because 20 people out of 100 people on average is really high. It's really high. So you got to plug that hole first. Don't even worry about marketing or anything like that. Just like really, like for real, like take an audit and enter your business. Be one of your customers, or like secret shop your own business. Check out the experience, right? However, for most gyms, because they care about their people, usually most gym owners come from a really good place, right? Chances are your bottleneck's probably inflow. Like you're probably losing like 5 or 6 people, and then you're stuck because you're only gaining 5 or 6 people.
Mhm.
And you gain 5 or 6 people because you've just been relying on like word of mouth. You've been relying on people that are just like your members talking to other people, but that's out of your control. You don't get to control like what people, whether how often people talk about you, how good of a review they give, right? It's like, so you need something that's consistent, that's predictable to get people in the door, right? It's like, and chances are they've used a bunch of things like social media, like organic postings, right? It's like, or Facebook Boost, or Groupons, or flyers, or hitting like maybe hitting the ground, just like handing out flyers, right? It's like you just need something that works, right? It's again, based on my experience, I've still seen Facebook and Instagram as a platform to be the single hand best thing that's able to offer consistency, predictability, and more so like stability to a business, right? Because then at that point you have leads. You just need people to raise their hands, right? Because if you have a gym, people don't know about you, how are they going to walk into the door? They won't. So how do you get in front of them? Well, this thing that people spend all their time on, you know? So,
I mean, listening to you, I mean, obviously your methodology is not just for gyms. I mean, obviously, like the base level of what you're talking about is designed and created for memberships. And I'm talking about general memberships. So, I mean, obviously, you're talking about the churn and anyone that has memberships. I mean, what he just stated is 100% fact. And it, again, I would look at you more as like a membership coach than just you specialize in gyms, but your real core of development is essentially memberships and how to retain and grow and scale memberships. That,
yeah. And beyond just membership, I mean, what it comes down to, it's like for me, the past 4 years, I've just really took a really deep dig into how to build a service-based business,
hmm,
because like for me to be the kind of person that has built out the team that we have, that has grown the pace that we have, it's like I needed to be the kind of person that really understood a service-based business and how to run one at a much deeper level, right? It's, which I'm sure I'll learn even more across time.
yeah.
Um, yeah, churn is something that every single service-based business deals with. And just a matter of, do you know those numbers? Do you not? Do you track those? Do you not? Um, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say, right, that person is listening right now. How do they get in contact with you? Where do you want them to reach out to you? What platform?
I would say for ease, just DM me on Instagram. And the podcast in which you're gleaning this from, right? It's like George L 1022. We're actually opening up a wait list currently. Yeah, no, I'll share it. We're building out a crazy offer coming up on December 1st, right? It's like still going through preliminary testing and everything like that, but we've recently started testing out like a brand new product and where we handle all of the what we call lead nurturing for our prospects, right? To get people in the door. We're seeing like a crazy high show rate. Like 90% of the people that we're booking for appointments and we're getting them to stay on is showing up, which is unheard of in the fitness industry. And we're putting together what we're going to be calling like a free 14-day challenge where a person pays us not a penny. They just cover the ad spend. They don't pay us a single cent. And over 14 days, we aspire to help a gym make anywhere between 7 to probably 12 grand in cash before we ask to partner up with them for long term, if it's the best thing for the business, right?
So
Um,
I'm just listening to you. I mean, you just brought up something about ad spend. So not to interrupt you, but I just want like the listener to really understand, so like that they can kind of raise their hands and be the right person for you. Ideally, how much ad spend are we talking about per month to kind of get them in the door?
Good question. So this is something that will probably shock a lot of gym owners. But this is also something that I think that's important for them to know, right? When it comes to the economics of their business. With what we have seen, whether it's gym or not, it usually costs anywhere between $50 to $150 to just get a person in the door and signed up, right? So that's just sheerly off of ad spend alone, right?
Mhm.
So then the next question is, all right, well, how many people do I want signed up? All right, so here's where the economics of it gets really hard. And these are things that I'd imagine if a gym owner or anyone else that started like a local brick and mortar business when they first started a business, they haven't thought about. Right? It's like, how do I acquire customers? How do I pay for a person to walk into the door and get them signed up? Right? Um, because how it works is, let's say like if you're spending money on Facebook and Instagram as a platform, if you know what you're doing, let's say $10 to $15 that you spend, you'll probably get in front of 1,000 people, 1,000 eyeballs in your community, real human beings, right? Then the next piece, if you know what you're doing and you're good at hooking people and getting them to stop reading, read the message, and then take action, you'll usually have out of 1,000 eyeballs, 1,000 people, you'll have about, let's say, 10 people click on it. Out of those 10 people click on it, if you know what you're doing, you'll have 1 out of those 10 people opt in. So name, email, phone number, and that's what we call a lead, right? So this is where paid traffic and having consistency and predictability is so different from word of mouth, right? Because like word of mouth, it also happens. You just don't see it. There are people talking about you every single day. You just don't see the people that haven't reached out to you yet, right? But for Facebook, so let's say you spend $10, you get in front of 1,000 eyeballs, 10 people click on it, 1 person become a lead. Then if you really know what you're doing, you can convert 1 out of 10 leads into a customer. So hence you spend $100 on ads, you get 1 person to sign up. And here's where the math becomes difficult. And this is why most marketing for gyms don't work. Most gyms are charging too low. Most gyms are charging just way too low, right? It's like they're already struggling, let alone being able to afford advertising, right? But they're in the chicken or the egg issue where it's most gym owners that we talk to are like, I can't afford advertising or marketing. It's like, you can't afford not to market, because how will things change if you don't change something about the way you operate your business, right? Because if you're stuck in the day-to-day, you've just been stuck and you work a 70-hour work weeks, something has to give, right? So at that point, it's like, if it costs you $100 to get someone in the door and sign up, and you're charging $100, do you make money? No, you break even. If you charge, let's say, 600 to $1,000 somehow, some way in which we know how, then you're playing with house money.
Gotcha.
The math makes sense, you know?
So essentially, if we would reverse engineer that, you're talking about essentially rolling it into the marketing cost per individual sign up into the actual monthly subscription.
Yeah, because it just comes down to, as a business owner, like for us, how we acquire gym owners as partners, same thing. We do the same thing. We practice what we preach, right? We run ads. It costs a certain amount for us to get people like on calls with us, for us to sign someone up. And how much we charge has to be above that for us to break even on the front end, right? Even after I pay our sales team out, right? It's just the economics that any gym owner or just any service providers need to be able to think about, right? It's like,
I mean, the numbers don't lie, for sure. So going into a quick bonus question. I like to ask this question because, again, I think for you, there's no telling that you may talk about some physics person, or you may talk about Tony Robbins. There's no telling, right? So if you could spend 24 hours with anyone, dead or alive, uninterrupted for those 24 hours, who would it be and why?
Interesting.
This is when I'll play the Jeopardy music in the background.
This might be a curveball, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Myself at a very old age. I'll be curious.
Anyway, I've heard the latter. I heard myself at a younger age, but you're saying yourself at an older age.
Yeah, just to see how I've grown, what I've gone through, my experiences, right? Just any words of wisdom, right? It's like, who I've become. I think that's always very important for me.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the question I asked you earlier about being able to time travel back. Would your older self time travel back to where you are right now, and then you had that 24-hour conversation and change the results possibly down the road? So it's that whole paradox thing.
Yeah, right.
Like you said, the chicken before the egg, right? Or the egg before the chicken. So definitely interesting. So going into closing, man, I know you've been on a few different podcasts. You understand the way podcasts work. So I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the Boss Uncaged podcast and actually ask me a couple questions. So the Boss Uncaged podcast is now your show. I'm your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
Why'd you start this?
Wow. I've gotten that question asked in different ways, but the reality of me, it really boils down to having an outlet for a legacy. And what that really means for me is not only for like my kids, but for other entrepreneurs that are coming after me or coming after my grandkids. And the only way I think about leaving behind information is documenting, making documents of it. And I think the best way to document is to record video and record audio. So by having this content and interviewing as many people that I'm interviewing and keep scaling and keep growing, potentially 10 years, 20, 30 years down the road, it'll be this abundance of content that will become my legacy that would also help other people in the future.
Hell yeah, man. um 10 years from now, what would you wish for your life, like in terms of what it looks like, where you are, who you are, what you're doing?
I think I'm a big out the box thinker. So I mean, 10 years from now, I'm not trying to be on the level to where I'm competing with like, Jeff Bezos or, with them, but I think what I'm building and developing right now has so many legs and so many facets to it to where it's becoming an international brand now, but I want it to be more like a household international brand, something that people, 30, 40 years down the road and be like, yeah, yeah, just look it up on Boston Cage. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Boston Cage interviewed that guy back in 2025, and it's kind of like an archive or a database of business information, much
Mhm.
like Forbes or Wikipedia.
That's badass. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is a single thing that you wish your listeners could take away from after every episode?
Well, one thing I want every listener to do is like all my episodes are uniquely different because I'm interviewing individual people on different journeys. And if there's someone out there that communicates like what your message is talking to them, and take action on it. Like just don't listen to it and shake your head and get all excited and be like, that was a great episode, high five essay, and then you go back to the mundane same old bullshit that you've been doing. Like take the steps, listen to what he's delivering, reach out to him, communicate with him, like figure out how do you get to the next level. Like you were saying earlier, a lot of times people were saying that well they don't have money for the ad spend, but they know they need the ad spend. Why the fuck are you keep doing the seesaw? Like figure it out, jump
Right.
forward. So that's the first thing. And in addition to that is like if that's not you, if you're like, oh, this is interesting, but you don't resonate with this message, but you may have somebody in your circle. This is where the 6 degrees of separation comes in. You may have someone that's in the gym in your circle. You may know the gym owner of your gym, and they may be at a level to where you're seeing the same exact people coming in the gym every single damn day. And they may be complaining about stuff or cutting corners, and the quality of the gym is dropping down because they don't have the funds. Well, this will be an episode for them to listen to figure out how to get more people in the doors, to get more funds. And it may not be for you, but it'll be for that person that's part of your life.
True. Yeah. Well spoken. I think what I'm hearing is the biggest thing is just like take action with information, right? It's like I think
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I have learned, especially the past 4 years, is because I've been in a bunch of I guess like more so private circles now in terms of different masterminds I have invested into and coaching programs. It's but one thing always holds true is that information without implementation is useless, right? It's like information is not really power. It's without implementation it means nothing, right?
Yep.
Um, trying to think.
He's turning people. He's turning. He's proud. You see the two scientists' brains coming together right now.
Well, actually, on that note, it's like, what's your favorite book? I'm curious because I know you asked that to me.
Man, I mean, some of the books that you named are obviously books that I read. I have a book club, so it's kind
Yeah.
of like it's just so many different books, right? I mean, I think all three of Bronson's books, right? I mean,
Yes.
obviously, Dot Secrets is great, but Traffic Secrets is the real meat and potatoes of how to even get that business to grow and scale.
Mm.
Tony Robbins' his early books are definitely great. Mel Robbins, the 5 second rule
Five
is a
second
book that
rule.
I
Yeah.
always bring up because I mean it's kind of goes back to what we're talking about. Like, what is the hesitation about? It's either yes or no, and if it's yes or no, and if it is yes, why the hell are you gonna wait longer than 5 seconds to execute it?
100%.
Yeah,
No, I'm all for it. Yeah. For me, I'm a big Tony Robbins fan as well. I mean, I think he's played probably more of an instrumental role than almost anyone in the entrepreneurial space because I think like even for example Tim Ferriss when he read the 4 Hour Work Week when he wrote the 4 Hour Work Week how he started his journey was like he actually consumed Personal Power by Tony Robbins, right? It's like that's another added one for any listeners if you ever want to jump into like let's say like a 30-day program. It's like Personal Power. That audio tape from Tony Robbins changed my life through and through as well. It's I think what it comes down to often is just a 1 degree shifts, right?
yeah,
Where a single if a decision is made on day one, you might not be able to see a big difference from there. But if you travel across time, let's say a month, a year, let's say 5 years from now on, it makes a world of difference, right? So you end up with a completely different decision. So take action on those, implement those for anyone that's listening.
Yeah.
Great books.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a living example of it. I mean, imagine, I mean, earlier on, I think, I don't even think you brought it up, but I mean, as far as like the way you were in middle school, and I think I read about it, and you were saying something about like kids were just mean. So, what if
Yeah.
you didn't take the initiative to start working out and bulking up and building your self confidence? If you didn't take that initiative, would we be sitting down now having this conversation today?
No
Hell
shot.
no.
No shot. Yeah.
It doesn't say, but you're a byproduct of taking action at every single step of the opportunity when it knocks. You didn't sit there and be like, I'll get to the door later. You turned off the video game, turned off the fuck ass TV, got up, and went out the damn door and executed. And that's all I'm saying, that if people do more of that, I think the world will be a completely different place. But we have to understand the rule of numbers means that 99% of the people won't do it.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I think this is I think why when this really sank in for me is this was when I was working on LinkedIn. Like it really hit me. It was like a gut punch.
Mm,
It was with this understanding that a person's life, your life, anyone that's listening to this life, my life, your life, it's where it is right now, who you are being currently, what you're doing, and what you have. It's all byproduct of all the cumulative decisions you have made up until this point. Like it's just all the cumulative decisions you have made up until this point that has created your reality as it stands. So we all get to create our own reality from tomorrow onwards and from this moment onwards, actually. And it begins with a decision, right? So I think oftentimes we'll get in our own heads about, man, well, I'll wait until tomorrow. Well, like, well, we tell ourselves these limiting beliefs, right? It's like, well, I need this to happen for this to happen. But in reality, I think once a decision is made, right, it's like, I will change. I choose to change. I've decided to change. You follow through with it, right? It's like you point the direction, you just go. And that'll change your reality completely, right? It's like in which a year, 2 years, or maybe shorter, maybe longer. It's like you won't even recognize like what your life looks like or who you are, you know.
mm.
But it's that first step, right? It's like as a cliche as it sounds, like a thousand step journey begins with a single step, right?
Mm.
Um, it's all true.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I think we could probably sit here and end up being like Joe
just
Rogan and
jam.
talk for 2, 3 more hours, but I
Yeah,
know obviously you got other things to do. So I
yeah,
definitely appreciate you being on the show today. I think you delivered a hell of value. I think the insight that people could kind of really understand like what it's really like behind the scenes of scaling and monetizing a gym or a membership and like you said, a service business, I think you fulfill that requirement 100% and I appreciate you.
gotcha, brother. Yeah, happy to provide value where I can. Appreciate you having me on.
Great. S.A. Grant, over and out.